piece of crap. Welcome back to the channel, guys. We're about to have us a little powwow. So I'm going to go ahead and preface this video and say, if you're not here to learn something, and if you can't stand rambling and you're just looking for entertainment, this probably isn't going to be the video for you. So feel free to clock out now. For the rest of you, we're going to kind of dig into this whole Cruz thing, a little bit of the engineering, and why I hate this car so much. Okay, it's no secret. I've said it 100 times before. As far as turbochargers go, generally I prefer to leave the turbochargers on the race cars. I don't like turbos on my daily drivers. They generate a lot of heat. They wear parts out faster. So for daily drivers, I prefer either a supercharger or nitrous. That's why we've got nitrous on the China Vet that my wife drives to work every day. That's why the DR Nova is NA, because it's a daily driver. And you know, that's why Chaos Series got twin turbos, because that car doesn't see a lot of miles. It's primarily a track car. So before we get started on the Cruz, I want to kind of explain to you guys why I don't like turbochargers on daily drivers. And this applies to even factory equipped turbo vehicles. Guys, turbos put out a tremendous amount of heat, okay? So if things aren't properly shielded, you know, heat resistant hoses and pipes and gaskets and things like that, or, you know, just some well-placed heat shields, you end up with an environment where stuff just wears out, it gets brittle, stuff tears up all the time. Also, you know, the turbos take a toll on your oil. They heat the oil going through them, it breaks the oil down faster. You also have to worry about expansion and various joints on the cold side. It's just, guys, it's more maintenance, and if a car isn't designed properly, it's really rough on the car. That's kind of the reason the Mitsubishi Eclipses and Eagle Talons and, you know, the Dodge Daytona turbos, you know, the turbo cars from the 80s and 90s got such a bad reputation for being pieces of shit. It wasn't necessarily that they were pieces of shit. It's just, well, the turbo, it puts out a lot of heat, guys, and it deteriorates things. So every time you work on one of those cars, stuff was just breaking, you know, emissions lines were falling apart, getting brittle, coolant hoses, and we pretty much got the same story going on with this Cruz, and that's very important. Remember, I said this as I'm explaining all the issues we've had with this car. So first off, I'm well aware this isn't the type of vehicle you're used to seeing on the channel here. We usually deal primarily with V8s, LS swaps, things like that, but since this vehicle has taken up so much of my time over the last couple weeks and prevented me from working on the fun cars, I kind of felt like I wanted to just do a little breakdown video and explain to you guys why. So this is a 2011 Cruz 1.4 turbo. We got this car for my son, hoping it would be a nice, reliable little car. Well, it had a check engine light on when we got it, but the car seemed to run well. And here's the little caveat to that, guys. These cars only make 138 horsepower stock, or maybe it's 148. I don't remember. 10 horsepower isn't going to make a big difference. But the point there is, I'm not used to driving something this slow. You know, we're used to driving the China Vet, Chaos Theory, you know, cars that haul ass. All right, so I don't know what a 150 horsepower car feels like. I really don't. And when I test drove this car, all I knew is it seemed like it was running smoothly. And it just seemed really weak, but I figured that was normal for a 150 horsepower car. Now, it also had the check engine light on, so I knew I was going to have some kind of issue there, but I was not prepared. So I got the car home, I hooked my scanner to it, and we pulled 7 codes initially. Now, I reset those codes, and we drove the car around a little bit, and I was kind of working on a checklist of items, which the checklist was originally, let's see, checklist was originally about that long, right there. The engine was filthy. The previous owner had cleaned it, probably to sell it. But, you know, I'd already planned on cleaning the engine. The previous owner had mixed the coolants, guys, which is a big no-no with Dexcool. So he had mixed green in with it. I already knew I was going to need to flush the coolant system. And right off the bat, the car was leaking coolant, and I figured out that it was leaking from the water pump. So I knew I was going to have to do that. And of course, I was going to change the oil. So those first four things, that's all I had planned on doing. Now, after resetting the codes and driving the car for a couple hours, these codes came back. There were 5 codes here. The other 2 codes did not come back. They might have just been intermediate stuff. I don't even remember what they were now, but these came back. So we had a turbocharger underboost condition, which is a common code on these cars. We had a catalytic converter efficiency, which could either be a catalytic converter or an O2 sensor. That's why I had test O2 sensor over here. We had a brake position sensor, which is also a common problem on these cars. We had a MAF sensor range fail, which, you know, 99 times out of 100, that's a bad MAF sensor. And then we had a coolant flow low code, which I thought may have been because of the water pump being bad. So I decided to go ahead and dig into this thing. Right off the bat, I replaced the water pump, flushed the coolant, cleaned the engine as well as I could in the driveway there. And let's see, what else did I do? Oh yeah, I went ahead and changed the oil. Well, while I was changing the oil, I found a pretty bad oil leak, which was coming from the oil feed line for the turbo here, which is another known failure. You're going to notice a theme here, guys. If you get online, these engines just have so many failures, and a lot of it is heat related from the turbocharger. Remember, I said to keep that in mind. So we went ahead and ordered a new line. I changed the oil. We were waiting on the new line to get here. I changed the water pump, which actually wasn't that hard to do. But in the process of changing the water pump, I discovered that the thermostat had failed. And when I say failed, I mean miserably failed. As a matter of fact, the thermostat is an electronically controlled thermostat. You can see the housing right here and the wires going into it. And the housing is made out of plastic, which is engineering mistake number 1. Why the freak would you make that out of plastic? But basically what happened is the plastic got hot, got brittle, deteriorated, and the whole inside of it had just kind of crumbled apart, and the thermostat spring was shoved all the way over here into the water pump. So we figured that out when I went to take the water pump off. So I went ahead and replaced that too, filled it back up with coolant. A couple days later, our oil feed line showed up. So we installed our oil feed line. Now, that brings us to the turbo underboost condition. So the old oil feed line, which I had already thrown away, originally they do not come with any heat shielding, which is stupid. Why would you not put heat shielding on an oil feed line, which is the lifeblood of your turbocharger, that is running directly above the catalytic converter, which gets up to about 1300 degrees, and directly above the turbocharger exhaust housing? I mean, that's just stupid. We replaced this line. The new line actually came with a double O-ring seal, which is an updated thing from GM, and it came with this little piece of heat shielding. Well, the old line was completely coked full of burnt oil. What I mean by that is I tried to blow it out with carb cleaner and nothing was coming out the other end, which tells me the turbocharger was getting no oil at all. So we're probably pretty lucky that the bearings in the turbo aren't fried. But here's what happened. I replaced this line. I went to test drive the car. After test driving the car, I mean, I floored it a couple times and it was still just as slow as it was before, which again, to me, I thought maybe that was normal. So I go to the gas station, I fill it up with gas because I'm about to hand the car off to my son because I think I've got it fixed now, right? Wrong. So I let it idle while I was filling up the gas, just letting it get up to temp and everything. Well, when I left the gas station, I floored it again and I felt something that I had not yet felt in this car, and that was the turbo spool up. It actually spooled up that time, and you know, it was nothing dramatic, but you could definitely tell a difference in power. So I think what had happened was the turbocharger, where it wasn't receiving oil, it was just sitting there baking, and it had gummed up the bearings and it wasn't spooling up. Once I gave it some fresh oil and it got warmed up, I guess it loosened the bearings up in the turbocharger and it started spooling up. So the car's actually performing acceleration wise where it probably should be now. So that was a good thing. But I brought the car back home and I parked it, and lo and behold, we found another coolant leak. So this time I got the car up on ramps trying to figure out where this coolant's coming from. Well, there is a hose that goes from the thermostat housing and it goes back to a pipe. The pipe is back here behind the turbocharger again, and it goes from the end of that hose over to the oil cooler, which is also behind the turbocharger, again with no heat shielding at all. So the oil cooler, it's all one solid unit, but the kind of radiator block is directly behind the turbocharger here, and there's a little O-ring that goes on that pipe that goes into the oil cooler, and that's where it was leaking from, guys. So I had to take everything apart to get that out. We finally got that out, and what I noticed was the oil, or the O-ring, was actually just melted, for lack of a better word, which doesn't surprise me because, again, all that piping is directly behind this turbocharger and above the catalytic converter, which gets really hot. And GM, in their infinite wisdom, whoever designed this car, decided that there didn't need to be any heat shielding back there. So I go to the dealer, I get the O-ring. I'm just about to put it all back together, and I notice this. So this is the rubber line that was back there behind the turbocharger, and you can see here it's got a little cut in it. Now, it's not cut enough to leak, but with my luck, I knew good and damn well if I put this thing all back together with this hose, that was going to be a future leak right there. So what I did, I went ahead, went to the dealer. This hose was $35 freaking, guys. And there's a reason for that. GM has updated, and instead of having just this regular silicone hose, the new hose that goes on there is a heat-resistant hose. Again, a problem you wouldn't even had if your engineers would have put a heat shield on there. So we've taken care of our underboost condition, which, again, I'm guessing was just the turbo, not spooling up. We got rid of our coolant flow problem, which was because of the thermostat that had busted apart. So now we're down to the MAF sensor, the brake position sensor, and the catalyst efficiency low. So after testing the O2 sensor, I determined that both O2 sensors were doing what they were supposed to do. So that tells me the catalytic converter was not doing what it was supposed to do. So we pulled it off, and listen to this. Sounds like a freaking baby rattle. So the catalytic converter was toast. Now, in the process of taking it off, every single bolt broke off. These are all the broken studs with the nuts still on them. And when I say every bolt, I mean every bolt, because even the band clamp right here that attaches the turbo, or the turbocharger housing to the catalytic converter, that bolt broke too. So what I did is I got online and found out that an actual replacement catalytic converter was about $600 for this thing. Well, obviously I wasn't going to spend $600. I didn't want to straight pipe it. I know a lot of you guys said, hey man, you should just straight pipe it. The reason I didn't want to do that is because I don't know if my son is going to keep this car or sell it. If he decides to sell it, it needs to have the catalytic converter on it so the next buyer doesn't get, all cringy about it. So we went on eBay. We found a catalytic converter replacement for $115, and it had all the tabs welded on here for the heat shield. Unfortunately, they weren't all welded in the exact right position. So we got the new catalytic converter in. Now, the new catalytic converter, instead of coming with these thin gaskets like this, it came with these cheap gaskets that are made out of this type of material here, which is about 4 times thicker. And it also came with just a standard band clamp like you guys have seen me use on my turbo builds, right? Well, this band clamp will not fit. Well, it's not a band clamp, it's a V-band clamp. This thing will not fit where it's supposed to go. There's just not enough room. It's too thick this way, it's too wide this way. So I ended up just going to Lowe's and finding a bolt that fit. And in case you guys have to go through this, in case somebody with a Cruz is actually watching this, the bolt that goes through here is a 8mm by 1.25 thread, and it needs to be 40 millimeters long. Yeah, just go ahead and get 40 millimeters long. I was going to say you could get away with a little longer. A little shorter really doesn't work because you can't pull the clamp together enough to like it was barely long enough to reach. But that's what you need for that. So this clamp would not work with the new style gasket because the gasket was so thick. So we ended up just reusing the old gasket. We're good, no leaks there. We got the other leak fixed. Oh yeah, the clamps. The clamps on all the intake tubing, they're garbage, guys. I broke 2 of them. Like you can see, I replaced this one with a better clamp. Down here, I had to replace this one with a better clamp. From the factory, it comes with these chintzy clamps. I think they're aluminum. I mean, they're thin, they're garbage. I didn't even put any torque at all on them, and they broke. Here's the broken bolt from that clamp I just showed you a minute ago. It just snapped right off. It was seized up. But we got all that fixed. So at that point, we got rid of our catalytic converter light, and we went out, we bought a new MAF sensor. So that got rid of this light. So the only light we had left was the brake position sensor, which is this guy right here. I'm just telling you right now, this thing was a total pain in the ass. If you're a little skinny guy with little hands and you've got a 7mm ratcheting wrench, that's what you need. Unfortunately, I'm not a little skinny guy. I weigh, what, 270? I'm 6'1", and my ratcheting wrenches go from 6mm to 8mm. There's no 7mm. So it was really hard to get my ratchet in there to get this one freaking bolt out. Some of you guys were laughing at the picture of me. I'll post it here. But yeah, I was having to lay upside down in the seat because my arm wouldn't bend the correct way to just come in from the side. Total pain in the ass to get this guy out. I mean, I spent probably 25-30 minutes upside down in that position removing this guy, but we got that replaced. So at this point, we have cleaned the engine. We flushed all the mixed coolant out of it. We replaced the water pump. We did an oil change, the brake position sensor, tested the O2 sensors, replaced the thermostat, replaced the MAF sensor, replaced the turbo oil feed, replaced the catalytic converter. We found our new leak, which was the oil cooler O-ring. We replaced that. In the process, we had to buy a $35 oil cooler hose, and that brings us to this. So this is another common problem on these cars. Right here, you've got your shifter linkage. There is supposed to be a bushing right here on the end of this linkage, and it snaps on to the arm on the transmission here to shift gears with your gear shift. Well, you can see the bushing's gone. So this is basically laying on here. So all it would take is a hard bump to pop that off, and then you'd go to put the car in park, and guess what would happen? You couldn't do it. So I believe all the auto parts stores sell a little universal plastic bushing kit for about $20. So we're gonna go get that, and hopefully we're finally done with this car, at least for a while. Now, another common issue on these cars, the exhaust housing on the turbocharger actually develops a crack right around the wastegate on the inside. This one has the crack, guys. It's a little hairline crack. It's a common issue on these. It is not normal. Please understand, there's a difference between common and normal. Common means it happens a lot. Normal means it's acceptable. Okay? This is not normal. This is not acceptable. But right now, it's a hairline crack. I'm not naive. I know what happens when things heat up and expand. And eventually, that crack is going to develop into a larger crack, which is going to start bleeding off pressure, giving us problems. But for now, we've data logged it. She's making 12.8 pounds of boost at wide open throttle. From everything I've read, it's supposed to make between 12 and 14. We're right in the middle of that. So I think we're good. But if my son keeps this car, I do see a replacement turbocharger coming in the near future. Another problem these cars have is with the PCV system back here. It gets gunked up. There's a little flapper in there. Basically, it's just poorly engineered, guys. That's what I'm getting at. I think when GM engineered this car, number one, GM doesn't have a whole lot of experience with production turbo cars anyway. So they really, I feel like they just didn't know what the hell they were doing. There should have been heat shielding You can see the heat shield on the catalytic converter is on the front. I don't even know why that's there, because there's nothing up here that the heat would hurt. That heat shield should be on the back side to protect all the hoses and things that run back here between the turbocharger and the engine. Same with the turbocharger. There should be another heat shield on the back side. That would have probably solved a lot of problems with things getting brittle, stuff like that. But again, you know, the Mitsubishis and the Dodges and things like that in the 80s and 90s, they had all these problems too, guys. I remember working on my little Daytona ES Turbo, and or I'm sorry, Pacifica Turbo, and everything you touched, every plastic part would just crumble and break from being exposed to that the heat from the turbo for so long. But that's pretty much it, guys. I mean, that's where we're at with this car. Again, the only reason I'm making this video is because this car has taken so much time away from the other project cars that we're normally working on the channel. I kind of wanted to give you guys an excuse. If you guys are on the Bad Luck Garage group page, or you pay attention to the news feed on this YouTube channel, then you already knew about this car and what I was going through with it. But this is just for you guys who don't have YouTube, don't have Instagram, and don't really pay attention to the news feed on the YouTube channel here. This is what I've been doing ever since we got the transmission replaced in the China Vet. It's just been constantly working on this car. It has been a nightmare, but I'm hoping we got it all buttoned up. So when I first bought this car for my son, I thought it was cool because the turbocharger actually has a boost control solenoid on it, kind of like a Mac valve, like I've got on the twin turbo Camaro out there. So the computer actually controls the amount of boost that this thing makes. And from what I've read, the factory turbo can support up to about 25 pounds of boost, which is usually good for, another 50, 60 horsepower over the stock 148 horsepower rated. Now, my son is not into cars at all, and I was kind of hoping that this might have been something that we could kind of play with together, like maybe I could crack out HP tuners and turn the boost up a little bit, and he could have a little fun with this car. Unfortunately, after everything I'm seeing, there is no way there is no way I'm going to try to hop up this car at all, guys, because I don't trust it. I really don't. And seeing the cheap parts that GM used on these vehicles, and after seeing the tens of thousands of videos out on these vehicles and all the common problems they have, that just tells me they're pieces of shit, basically. I know there is a community that plays with these cars and tinkers with them, but even within that community, it's just they're constantly tearing up. So I don't think that's something we're going to do with this car. Maybe on down the road he'll trade it in on something else, and maybe I can get him into it a little bit, and it'll be something that he wants to play with. But for now, we're just going to leave this guy stock. It's just going to be a general maintenance thing, and that's pretty much it. So that's where I've been for the last week and a half, guys. That's why I haven't been putting out any videos on the other cars. We do have some more general maintenance stuff coming. So Abby, the car hauler over here, we got to do a lot to this, guys. While I've been working on the hot rods over here, this poor girl here has just been neglected. So we've got to do a wheel bearing. We need a new four-wheel drive actuator. The four-wheel drive hasn't worked in over a year. We've got an issue with the evap system. We've got an issue with one of the sensors, for the backup. I forget what it's called, but that basically lets you know when you're about to hit something. I've got to get that fixed. We've got several issues on that. The China Vet, when we were doing the transmission videos on it last week, one thing I noticed is the brakes are totally shot. So we're probably going to do a little upgrade on the brakes on it. Do drilled and slotted rotors all the way around, new pads, and Tracy's Camaro back there, it actually needs brakes too, so we're probably going to do some brakes on it. I will probably do a video on all this. And then we've got Chaos Theory, our twin turbo Camaro, looking sad under all the tarps here. We got to get her back in. We've just got a couple little electrical issues to sort with her, and we need to make some clearance for our other wheels that have the drag radials on them, and then she's going to the track, guys. So that's what's coming. I think we're gonna, before we do any of this other stuff, we may do the brakes on the Corvette next, and then right after that we're gonna get Cece back in the garage here and get her lined up so we can go ahead and start pulling some track days, because I'm jonesing for a track day, but also a lot of you guys know about the medical issues I've been having. So I'm kind of interested in getting to the track, getting in a really fast car again, and you know, kind of seeing how my brain reacts, if that makes sense. So I'm not going to keep rambling too long. Guys, if you're looking at buying a Cruze or a Sonic, same engine, or if you're kind of into that, I hope this video kind of helps you out with some stuff to look out for. Hopefully you have better luck with your car than we're having with this one, but that's all I got for you right now, guys. So thanks once again for watching. Now get off YouTube, get out in the garage, get something done, and I'll see you next time here on Bad Luck Garage.